Today's scripture reading will be taken from 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3 through 5. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3 through 5. For though we walk in the flesh, we are not waging war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to obey Christ.
The famous Chinese war general, Sun Tzu. He's also the credited author with the Art of War. He is thought to have formulated much of our philosophical thinking both in the eastern as well as the western hemispheres of the world. Military minds, even to the present, still look to him for advice and things that he wrote down and all the success that he had in his conflicts around the world. He lived about 500 years before Jesus, and Sun Tzu made this comment. He said, I've learned that every battle is won before it is fought, which might sound silly because depending on who wins, well, that is on the basis of what occurs on the battlefield. Well, no, he says that the victory, actually, I've learned, happens far before that. And it has to do, yes, with your strategizing and going in with the right plan, but he's also referring to the mindset that must be present to go into battle to be victorious. The self-deemed great one, or the greatest, by the way, there are other people who call him that also, but he called himself the greatest. He was really good. The heavyweight boxer, Cassius Clay, better known as Muhammad Ali, 56-5 in heavyweight professional bouts. Knew what he was doing when it came to boxing. He said, if my mind can conceive it and my heart can believe it, then I can achieve it. He's referring to, before I go out in the ring and I battle with the opponent, I have to make sure that my mind is in the right place if I want to win. It's pretty neat that a brilliant war general stated such, and that a famous professional athlete made mention of it, but it's much more relevant that our God says the same thing and came up with the idea long before these guys did. Proverbs chapter 23, verse 7 reads, For as a man thinks in his heart, so he is. Telling us that God created our mind to be a powerful entity within us. This mind can be used for all kinds of good things. It can be used for wonderful things. And it can also be used for bad things. And there's a choice that we have to make. As was read for us by Brody just a moment ago, we are involved in a conflict. We're on the battlefield, whether we like it or not. Now the weapons that we're using, we don't have guns and knives and bombs and tanks, or in the old days, bows and arrows and catapults. And, we're not fighting with spears and with swords. It's not like that. But this battle is taking place with our thinking. It's going on within us. And there's a force at work within us, and it can be used in two very different ways. And we're going to find on one side of things, our mind can become our greatest enemy if we allow it to do so. I want to read another passage from the book of Proverbs. This time it's from the 4th chapter in verse 24, where we're informed of an activity that we want to avoid as God's servants. Proverbs 4:24, put away from you a deceitful mouth and put perverse lips far from you. But we're given some advice leading into this. If you want to be successful in this endeavor, here's step 1 in this process. Verse 23, keep your heart with all diligence. Listen to this. For out of it spring, that's not ooze or barely fall. It's out of your heart spring, issue, jump forth the issues, the problems of life. It makes me think of a familiar account in the New Testament, so much so that we're not even going to turn to and read it. I'm just going to reference it from the 5th chapter of Acts, when people in the early church are being so sacrificial in their loving giving toward God and their fellow man. And there's this couple. Their names are Ananias and Sapphira. They do what many others are doing at that time, and they sell an extra piece of property they have. It's not even from their income. It's from their assets. They don't have to give any of this, I don't believe. They liquidate, though, this asset. And they take it to the apostles, who are the church's leaders at that point, and they say, here, we sold this piece of property, and as others have been doing, this is 100% of all that we got from it when we liquidated this asset. And they say, great, well, that's very kind of you, thanks. And probably people start talking about how great Ananias and Sapphira are, as they were some other early Christians. But apparently God informs Peter of something that nobody else knows. He says, look, these people who have given this, they did give something, but they didn't do what they said. They kept part of that for themselves. And Peter goes and he addresses this one-on-one with this couple. And when he does with Ananias, he mentions this to him. He says, why have you conceived this thing in your heart? That's where the real issue lies. We often point out, well, they lied, and that's true. But the reason they lied is they hadn't prepared themselves to do the right thing on the inside. Several years ago, the Kansas City Chiefs, were in need of a running back. They had a great one in Jamal Charles, and he was at the end of his career. I believe he'd even retired in that offseason. So in the third round of the draft, they took a prospect out of Tulsa University, Kareem Hunt, or I said Tulsa, I believe it's Toledo maybe if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, they took him out, and he had all this promise. Man, he had a great rookie season. He got in the lineup early because of injury. I believe it was the next year he led the league in rushing, and then the third year he was just rolling, going into a contract year. But in the off season, there was a report that he'd gotten himself into trouble, as a lot of the athletes do, and they get the notoriety and the money. And the brass of the Chiefs set him down in a room, closed doors. Nobody knew about this until later. And they said, look, just tell us what happened. Just be honest with us. Throw it all out there. No matter what. If you did it, just let us know. He said, I'm telling you, I didn't do it. I'm innocent. And they said, all right, that's all we need to know. We'll stand behind you. And well, about midway of the season, he's having just a great year. There's a surveillance video that's obtained and released to the public that shows him doing the very thing that he swore to his bosses he did not do. Within 24 hours, this superstar was cut from the team, all ties severed with him. And a lot of people thought, well, that's what they should do because he did this bad thing. But later it came out, the team said, well, we didn't cut him because he did something he shouldn't have done. We cut him because he sat in front of us and lied to us about it. And we don't feel like we can trust and work with someone like that. They understood that the issues here were much deeper rooted than just some things that had taken place on the outside. It was something that had occurred within. Jesus in Matthew chapter 15, he calls this big group of people to himself in verse 10, and he speaks to them, hear and understand. It's not what goes into the mouth that defiles a man, but it's what comes out of the mouth. This defiles a man. Verse 17, do you not understand that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and is eliminated? I'm sure Jesus doesn't want to have the digestion 101 talk with these people, but sometimes you have to start at a lower level to get to the higher things. Within reason, it's not what you put into your mouth that's the major concern, not the permanent concern to us. Every day I have eaten salad from every day, almost every day for 2-3 years. I don't even remember how long this dates back. I'll make a chef salad on a dinner plate. And as a topping for that, I will put deli salami, thinly sliced. I'll get 4 pieces and tear it up. It's not really about the protein on top as much as it is the flavor that it adds to the salad. Well, I was out of my deli salami. And we usually get it from Walmart. It's all the way across town. I'm in a crunch that day, and so I run to Price Cutter to get my half pound of salami that will last me for several days and still be good, after that to finish eating. Well, I let the lady know at the counter I would like half a pound of salami sliced on the number 1 setting. And you know how it's awkward if you sit there while they're, so I'm looking around all this stuff I'm not going to buy, just trying not to be awkward. And I go back and she puts this salami down on the counter that's like this thick. Not like each piece, but the whole package of it. I knew that was not what I'd requested. I looked, it's over a pound of salami. I thought, I'm not even going to be able to get through this. That's okay, no big deal. Thank you, have a nice day. So I get home and I make my salad and I get out that salami. I open the bag and, whew, that doesn't smell right. Oh well, tear it up. I'm a man. I put it on there and I eat it, but it's kind of getting hard to stomach by the end. Well, the next day I get out my probably 0.89 pounds of salami that are left, and I open the bag. Oh, it smells even worse today than what it did before. Oh well, I'm a man. I put it on my salad, but as I'm eating it, I had to pick around all the salami that day. And I thought, this isn't going to work. And they're good to stand behind. Stores are, they're deli meat. So I took it back the next day and put it on the counter of the customer service desk, told the lady what had happened. And she said, oh yeah, no problem. We can take care of that for you. And as it's sitting there zipped closed, she says, oh, I can smell that. And she's giving me picks it up and throws it in the trash. She's about to get sick, about to gag over it. I put this rancid meat into my body, and I didn't get sick from it. Within reason, it's not what you put into your body that's going to hurt you, but we focus a whole lot on that, don't we? What it is that we put into our mouths. You have weaknesses when it comes to food, as I do. I try not to eat one Krispy Kreme donut because I want to eat 6 after I've had one. I try not to eat flaming hot limon, has to be the limon, crunchy Cheetos, because if I eat one, I will eat at least half a bag, and I'm not talking about a snack bag either. I'm glad we don't have a Culver's in town, because every time we go, I get my double butter burger in my basket with my fries. I don't normally drink soda, but I drink 3 house root beers in that setting. And I just hope that my kids don't finish all of their food, because I finish all of their burgers, their chicken strips, and their fries. And I roll out of Culver's. The one's been put in recently at Camdenton. That's getting dangerous. It's a little bit too close. I love Culver's. That's my weakness. Thankfully, we don't do that very often. We went to Florida this summer, and unfortunately in our area, the Kuntzes and the Burrows know that you can't buy caffeine-free Coke anymore. Not diet caffeine-free, just regular Coke without the caffeine. From COVID, they stopped making it. Well, I found from our vacation trips, they still are producing and selling it down in Florida. And so I measured my vehicle before we went down and recognized that I had enough space for 27 12-pack cases of caffeine-free Coke. And so I brought back 27 cases, and we drank it while we were there. I drink on average about 1 can of soda a week. That's not because that's what I want. I would easily drink a case of that a week if I were doing what I want. But I try to be careful. I'm not great about it, but I try to be careful about what I put into my mouth. I'm very particular, and you probably are also. Can you imagine what would happen if we would give just a fraction of the emphasis on what comes out of our mouth compared to what it is that we put into our mouths? Jesus said, within reason, it's not what you put into your mouth that's going to kill you, but it's what comes out of your mouth that has the potential to destroy you. And here's why he says this, verses 18 through 20. But those things which proceed out of the mouth, they come from the heart, and they defile a man. For out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies. These are the things which defile a man. But to eat with unwashed hands does not defile a man. And that's the place where this conversation with these people begins. Jesus didn't wash his hands before he was eating bread, and they say, oh, you can't do that. That's wrong. Jesus says we give this attention to the outside of the body. And now I appreciate the sentiment of the Pharisees, and you probably do also. In my school classroom, I know it doesn't look huge here, but I have this giant, I think it's bigger than this one actually, this giant bottle of hand sanitizer on my desk. And I encourage students to use it liberally. That's their choice. And then in the back, I have a smaller bottle of hand sanitizer right beside the snot rags. And I encourage them especially to use it back there because they'll, on the Kleenex and wad it all up. And, no, that's back there for a reason. I don't want you touching the same stuff that I'm touching. or go to the bathroom if you prefer. Wash. If you have something you want to bring and spray on your hands, by all means, do so. I also have another huge bottle of it in my closet. I believe in cleanliness of the outside. I think it's very important. They don't understand germs like we do. It's ceremonial to them. But they really emphasize the outside cleaning. Jesus says that's not what's going to kill you when it's all said and done. But what will is if you don't address and clean up what's found on the inside. Because all these terrible sins that you perceive, the only way they can take place is because you're entertaining things within that you should not. In a previous town I lived, there was a very good doctor in the community. And this doctor, unfortunately, didn't turn out to be quite as solid a family man as he was a doctor. Is a great family doctor, very well respected. This man left his wife, he divorced her, he married his secretary, he'd been having an affair with her, she found, for over a year. And he left his kids and he started a new life and a new family with this woman. It's a really sad deal. But come to find out, years prior to that, this wife really thought maybe she was being a cool wife or really understanding. I don't know exactly what it was. But word has it that she had, and this is from the family itself, so I take it as trustworthy, that she had purchased him a subscription to pornographic materials. And her thinking was, well, I don't care if he just looks at that kind of stuff. I can't prove exactly what went on and what didn't. But I have a guess that probably many years of entertaining things that he shouldn't have been in his heart finally manifested themselves and resulted in the end of that marriage and that previous home. Jesus says it's out of the heart all of these things proceed. And that's why we need to keep our hearts with all diligence. James chapter 1, verse 12, blessed is the man who faces this battle on the inside, who battles the temptation, who comes through on the other side victorious, because that's the one to whom the Lord promises the crown of life. It's those who love Him over their own desires. But then here's the other side of things, verse 15. For the one who goes through this battle and doesn't overcome, sin, when it is full grown, will bring forth death. That's how relevant this battle is going on inside of us. It's not, well, it could turn out good or not so good. It turns out great or it turns out awful. It ends in either life or death. We have to make sure we're victorious in this battle. So how do we win this battle on the inside? We have to understand how sin works. And we're told in this very passage, verses 13 through 16, let no one say when he's tempted, I'm tempted by God, or God, this is your fault. You're trying to get me to do wrong things. God doesn't do that. He's not tempted by evil, nor does He Himself tempt anyone. And we often say, whose fault is it for all of our sins? Well, that devil, if he wouldn't, he has a role in it, doesn't he? But notice where responsibility goes according to verse 14 ultimately. Each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires on the inside and enticed. Then when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, brings forth death. Do not be deceived, my beloved brethren. What he's saying is quit trying to blame everyone else for your sin. And do you realize that even when we sin, it really isn't the devil's fault as far as a final choice that we make? The devil cannot force us to do one thing that's wrong. He can show us what's wrong, and he can encourage us to do wrong, but he can't make us do a single thing that is wrong. We will only do it if we choose to do it based on what we ourselves want to be done. Several years ago in our family, we gotten on this movie kick. We haven't watched very many for a while, but we were watching movies, and we'd seen all the recent releases that had come out, and I was trying to think, well, what could we watch, something that's older that we enjoyed maybe as kids that the kids might like also. And I remembered the Gremlins series. You guys watched those? And I remember the first one. It was great. And then we watched the second one, and it was trash. Not like rancid. It's just dumb. Don't waste your time. Terrible storyline. And I don't want to give away too much of the 1980s movie, but there are these little evil creatures that come about, and they terrorize the other sweet little, I'll just show you. Sweet little Gizmo. Yeah, ones like him that you're rooting for. Yeah, they're trying to kill these sweet little gremlins and trying to kill human beings and destroying even cities. You don't want these ugly guys showing their faces. How do we keep that from happening? Well, it goes back to the 3 rules that we find out about Gizmo in the very beginning. Keep him out of the light. He hates bright light, especially sunlight. Keep him away from water. Do not let him get wet. And especially, no matter how much he cries or begs, never, ever feed him after midnight. And here's why. It's a little bit different the way it works with gremlins. Because if you violate these rules, there are these nasty bubbles that form and pop off of them, and they turn into these guys. And so you don't want these to come around and to wreak havoc in everyone's lives. How do you make sure it doesn't happen? Make sure that birth is never given to them. Make sure that they're never even conceived by not violating the rules. And then you don't have to worry about them. Sin works just like gremlins. It's ugly. It wreaks havoc in your life. And you don't want to have anything to do with its ugliness. So how do you make sure it never shows its ugly face? Don't allow it to be born, is what we're told. Don't violate the rules so that it's ever conceived, and then you never have to worry about sin. Works just like gremlins do. Jeremiah chapter 17, verses 9 and 10. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? I, the Lord. I search the heart. I test the mind, even to give to every man according to his ways, according to the fruit of his doings. He says, your heart can be your greatest enemy, and you can't trust it. I made it to be powerful. I know that. But then there's another side of things also. You realize that if you handle your heart the right way, it can be your greatest ally in this battle. We are told in Hebrews chapter 5, verse 14, solid food belongs to those who are of full age. That is, those who by reason of use have their senses exercised or practiced to discern both good and evil. If we practice the right things in our minds, we put the right things in them, we go through all these scenarios that could unfold not when it's practice then, but when it's game time. And the lights come on and everyone's watching, it becomes muscle memory to us. It's not like, oh no, what do I do here? It's, okay, so as we practice, this is what I do. And because we've trained our minds through practice in that way. It's football season, and I know I've referenced it once, so this is a second one. My last one, though, I believe, of the lesson. Super Bowl 57 last year. It ended up really well for the Chiefs, and I hope this year goes the same way. Super Bowl victory. For those who are Chiefs fans, I would love to hear afterward, what was your favorite moment in that game? I might hear it's in the second quarter. It's the scoop and score by Nick Bolton that really kind of keeps the Chiefs in the game for the comeback at the end. Some might say that it's the swing out to Sky Moore for the touchdown, or earlier it's the basically identical play, the swing out KT touchdown. Or maybe it's the punt return by KT, record length in the Super Bowl that really sets up the victory. I'm like you, Joe, and I'm going to guess your favorite play is the same as mine. It was a play in which nobody scored, and it didn't gain a lot of yardage either. An unsung hero, not only of the game, but as well the entire season, is the lesser-known running back, Jerick McKinnon. He's a kind of a journeyman veteran in the league. And late in the game, he had the opportunity just to waltz right into the end zone and to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl. To put his team up 6, probably going to be 7 points. But had he scored, it would have left a lot of time on the clock for the Eagles to go down the field to score, to tie the game, for it to go into overtime, or maybe go for 2 and win the game in regulation. He slid down at the 1-yard line. He didn't score a touchdown in that game, giving up the personal accolade so the team could then bleed the clock, kick a field goal to go up only 3, but with just a few seconds left in the game, and essentially ended the game and gave his team the Super Bowl victory. Afterward, when he was asked about this decision and what was going through his head, he says, well, looking back now, I understand how big it was in the game, he said, I wasn't really thinking about that at the moment. He said, I wasn't thinking about scoring. He said, we practice this every week. And if it's at the end of the game, you go down and you bleed all the time off the clock so your team wins the game. He says, we practice it always. So in game time, it wasn't any big deal. There wasn't any decision to be made. His senses had been exercised of how to do the best thing for the team or to do the best thing for yourself. And he says, that's easy. I've been trained. I've practiced to do the best thing for my team. My team is going to win the game. We have to exercise our senses, listening to the coaching that we've been given. We have to train our hearts and practice going through all the scenarios that we could meet in a given day so we're not confused when it's game time and the lights are on and everyone's watching and God's watching also. We've trained our hearts for what they need to do. And in that moment, our heart has become a powerful ally. This training begins, 1 Peter 3:21, whenever we are biblically baptized. And this involves water, but it's not like baths that you would normally take or people in Bible times that they took. It's not about washing the dirt off of your body, even though you're getting into a bathtub, so to speak. It's about the cleaning that God does on the inside. It's about a decision and a commitment that's been made within. And actually, the wording here, the answer, is better translated the appeal that is made to God for a clean conscience or for a pure heart. We can take something or someone and dunk it in water, but that doesn't mean that we made a Christian. We have 2 cats at our house. One of them likes me some. The other one still doesn't understand. I told Vanessa the other day, Sheldon does not realize after, been a year, I write the checks. I write Sheldon's checks, and he still does not understand and appreciate. Who does he think buys all this food that he enjoys so much? He won't give me the time of day. Still that one. Loves the kids, though. Oh, loves those that don't write the checks. Don't understand it. I wouldn't do it. But I could take one of our cats, and I could dunk it in the pool. And it could be, I got blood running all down my arms. I haven't made a Christian. I've just made a mad cat. I can do the same thing with a person. Someone who has no internal commitment, no desire to live for Jesus. I could take that person, or the person say, hey, dunk me underwater and I want to be saved. That doesn't necessarily mean this person's been saved. It's about an internal commitment and about a cry through the obedient action out to God, save me from my sins. Wash, not my body, I can do that. Wash what I can't wash. Make me clean on the inside. Hebrews 10:22 and 23, let us draw near to God with a true heart, in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. Yeah, we need our bodies to be washed with pure water, but it's not just about being dunked in water. It's about approaching God with a genuine heart. It's about needing your heart to be sprinkled from wrongdoing, to live a new life. During my college years, one of my good friends knew that I was going into seminary school, and she told me, I've been thinking about being baptized. And she said, whenever I decide to be, she said, I want you to baptize me. Just some background. This person was not a very religious individual, and it caught me off guard. But of course, that's wonderful, and that's what I told her. That's great. I said, I would love to do that. And knowing she didn't have a lot of understanding about what that means, I just talked to her a little bit about, this is a commitment that's made to Jesus, and there's some things that he's going to want you to give up in life, and some things, good things that he's going to want you to do. And so I'm just briefly explaining this, and she got a funny look on her face, and she stopped me in my tracks when she said, well, why would I want to do that? That also caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting that one. And I realized, this is great that she's thinking about that. That's good. But obviously the time's not now or probably in the extremely near future. There's some more learning there that needs to take place. It's not just about having our bodies washed. It's about approaching God with a genuine heart It's about saying, look, I'm evil. I've allowed this evil in on the inside, and I need it to be purged out. I need something new. Are you willing to help me with that and give it to me? I make this appeal to you through what you've told me to do. In the 8th chapter of Acts, there's a guy who's made this very appeal to God, and he makes a mistake. Verses 18 and 19, when he sees that it's through the impartation of the apostles' hands that miraculous workings of the Holy Spirit are given, he offers them money and he says, hey, give me this power also. I could make a killing off of this. He's a businessman. And that's when Peter says to him, no, he tells him, your heart is not right in the sight of God. He says, what you need to do is pray to God, if perhaps the thought of your heart may be forgiven you. For I see that you're poisoned by bitterness and bound by iniquity. Simon answered and said, will you pray to the Lord for me, that none of the things that you have spoken will come upon me? When Peter looks to direct him to fix this wrongdoing that's entered into his life, he never mentions, now, the next time the church gets together, it's going to be time for you to walk the green mile, buddy. You have to go forward, and you have to tell everyone what it is that you've done. He says, you can fix this on your own. The issue isn't so much with others, the issue's with you, and it's on the inside. And it isn't simply, well, just pray to God and the mumbo-jumbo line of I've sinned, forgive me, please. It's change your mind. Your heart is not right in the sight of God. And that's the battle that's going on within every one of us. Our hearts will either be our greatest enemies or our greatest allies, depending on the practice and the advice, whether we listen to the head coach and what he's told us. Brody, we'll bring it full circle, buddy. 2 Corinthians 10, 3 through 5. Though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh. We are on the battlefield, don't misunderstand, but we're not fighting with guns and knives and bombs and tanks. The weapons of our warfare are not material, but they are mighty in God for pulling down strongholds, casting down arguments. It's a war of words. And every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, the thinking of ourselves and of others, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. It's that Jesus has control of our insides. And if he has control of our insides, we don't have to worry about him controlling our outsides. Obedience is necessary. We must be involved in it. But the key to that is to train our thoughts. Train our minds not to be our enemies, but to be our allies. And that's the issue into which Simon had run. He's a baptized believer now, but he says something that isn't the way it ought to be because somebody other than the Lord has control of his heart. And so that's why Peter tells him you need to change the way you're thinking. Quit allowing yourself to run your life. Let God run your life. Let him train your mind. Your heart is not right in the sight of God. Pray to him and ask him if the thought of your heart may be forgiven you. It could be that you've been kicking around, doing what Simon and so many in this room have done, being baptized for the forgiveness of your sins, and what a wonderful consideration that is. But don't forget what that means. It's a commitment that's being made to God. It's a cry, an appeal out to him that I'm filthy on the inside, and I need you to clean me up with the blood of your Son. I'm drawing near to you with a genuine heart and full assurance of faith. I need my heart to be sprinkled from an evil conscience. And he will grant you that request if you'll respond to him in faith-led obedience. There's a struggle that's going on inside every one of us right now. Our hearts are telling us, do this or don't do this. And we need to recognize that while on one hand, our heart can be our greatest foe if we haven't practiced and if we haven't listened to the advice of the one who's in charge. But for the one who listens to what the all-knowing one says, and for the one who's willing to conform his or her will to the Almighty's, that's one who has their senses exercised, practiced to discern good and evil. So when the lights come on and everyone's watching and God is watching too, it's not, oh no, what do I do here? You've trained your heart to be a guide because God is the one who has trained your heart. The battle is going on the inside. Every battle is won before it is fought. If my mind can conceive it and my heart can believe it, I can achieve it. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. If your mind hasn't been exercised the way that it should, if you haven't been listening to what the one in charge has told you, come to him and he'll help you clean up the inside, and he'll help train your heart not to be an enemy, but to be a friend. Come, let him help you as we stand and sing together.